All right, I'll start with d4. We played a lot of e4 today. So we'll start with d4, and then I'll take suggestions here. e4, d5. What do we like? What do we like? Queen's Gambit, majority rules. c4, solid opening. All right. Well, first question is, does anyone know what this is called? And the next question is, what the hell are we going to do? So this is a way for black to try to... It's honestly very similar to one of our previous games where if I take, the whole point of the opening is for black, surprisingly, to take this pawn and push it forwards. So I literally take a free pawn. Black pushes the pawn, and then it's almost like, oh, the pawn on e5 is so far from the rest of my pawns and pieces that it'll be caught out and won by black. And once he wins it, then he has this extra space from the d4 pawn. It's kind of a weird opening. Also, if we take on d5, then the queen comes out. And if we play some sort of knight c3, already d4 is hanging. So you can kind of see the similarities to one of our previous games as well. So both of these have a clear answer. But even though d4 is the move, there's not really anything you should be playing against this. Then pawn takes here. It's the free pawn. Take it and find out what the opening's all about. I can't say there's anything better than that, so you should pretty much always be accepting this. And remember, even if you lose this pawn back, it'll just be even after that. It'll just be even. Okay, takes d4. What did I say? Bishop here is kind of a move, right? It's one to be careful of. For example, if you did something like e3, black will play bishop b4 check, right? So bishop b4 check, then you'll go bishop d2 to block the check. Then black will take on e3, and, well, you don't want to take back with the pawn. That's stupid. And your bishop can't take. And then you realize, wait a minute, that's a free piece on b4. So you take it, free bishop. Then black takes on f2 with check. If you take it, you lose your own queen. So genius, you go king e2. You're like, okay, whoops, didn't see that, but at least we're still alive. Bishop g4, we have knight f3. Well, that's why in this position, black plays pawn takes your knight and promotes to a knight and checks your king on e2. And then when you take back that damn knight, bishop g4 happens, skewering your king to your queen, and you don't even have knight f3 anymore because you just lost it, remember? Okay. Glad we all saw that. Well, that's the most common trap in this opening, as far as I know, with e3. So I'm going to suggest a move here that just takes the pressure off. a3. You guys will not fall for that trap if there's no bishop that could show up on b4. Done. Easy. Okay. c5. Actually, don't think that's a good move. I think black needs to be very direct in taking this pawn back. Now, e3 does look like a pretty decent move. e3 to me is starting to look not too shabby. I do not like c5 for my opponent here. So now e3, there's none of this. And it's like, yeah, I have this pawn, but okay, if the time comes, I can defend it with these moves. For now, e3. I'm trying to undermine this. Okay. Defending this and attacking that. Obviously, a fantastic multi-purpose move. I have a multi-purpose move of my own. It does the exact same thing. Attacks and defends. It's all about these two squares in this opening, which is why a very common next move would be bishop here, fighting for that square once again. Another idea would be the knight out to g6 to attack this. Another one is often this bishop coming out to c5, but this move doesn't really allow that anymore. So now I'm not sure where this bishop is going. So bishop to g4. If we take on d4, the knight can take back. And, you know, remember, we are pinned here. Is a little bit annoying. But if we play bishop e2, takes, knight takes e5, there's a pawn hanging here. There's a check on a4. That doesn't actually look too good for black. You can't just only move your queenside pieces, leave these guys all at home, be down a pawn, and expect to have a good position. So bishop e2 looks simple. It also threatens a nice idea sometimes if knight takes d4, and then knight takes back on e2, which is a common trick when you have a bishop there. So I like h3, I like bishop e2, because no matter what, it looks like if you take and take, that we have other moves to do. But takes, knight e5 is not forced. So I like bishop e2 a little bit more. You take, bishop takes back. We have these threats ready to go. So I prefer bishop e2 because it actually looks like when black plays this that he wants to take and take back on e5. So if the guy wants to take anyway, I'm not going to pressure him with h3. I'd rather develop a piece. d3 is not possible. Knight takes e5, not possible. Welcome those who just joined us. A really nice raid there. Thanks a lot, Quintiliano. We're doing some rapid chess here. Slow games, slow explanations, walking through the basics. And we're up against the Albin counter gambit here. So it's called. That's right. Queen's Gambit, but e5 played. Kind of a weird looking move. Knight h6. Knight h6. Interesting move. I'm immediately drawn to pawn takes. Maybe there's even a bishop takes h6. But our whole point of unpinning was that now we can take here. Knight takes d4 doesn't quite work the exact same way as it did before. Still an interesting move, though. Knight takes on d4. But no, I don't think it's as good as it was before. Knight takes is a little bit dicey. Or knight takes, pawn takes. If we win the piece back, knight e5. Not sure what's going on there. But pawn takes is kind of the plan. It lets our bishop out. We can also just get castled nice and easy. But let's start by taking, open our bishop. And once we castle, we'll start to make some significant threats. Like, for example, I don't think this pawn can ever be recaptured while the king's in the middle. Black's got to get castled first. Okay. Takes, looks extremely tempting. It really does. But bishop then comes to g7 pretty nicely. Castles. Pawn might be lost. I'm thinking to myself, is the move knight f5 really bothersome? Because if we castle and knight f5 happens, I'm actually not that unhappy. If we castle and bishop e7 happens, then maybe you can appreciate that bishop h6 might be a little bit better, because now the bishop's not going to g7. So I don't like bishop takes on h6 right now. What I do like is getting castled so that bishop takes here is never ever a threat. We have rook to e1 coming. We're going to be looking to play rook e1. At some point, the b pawn can push, but that's very slow for this opening. We want to make sure we're getting pieces out. So castling to safety. Knight f5 can be played, and then I would probably play h3. If the bishop moves back, g4 might win a piece. And if the bishop takes, you still can't really take. I have rook e1, also b7 is hanging. d3. All right, well, remember, we're already up a pawn in this opening. Let's not forget that. So we're already ahead one pawn. After d3, we're going to be ahead another pawn. So I have a big decision to make here. First of all, if we take with the, let's say, bishop. Knight takes e5 using the pin. We could return our bishop to e2, right? And then trade everything. Queen takes d3, takes. Then there's no knight takes e5. So then the only way through for my opponent would be to play bishop captures f3. Pawn takes, the knight takes on e5. I've lost the pawn, but remember, I'm already up 2 after I take on d3. So I'll be up a pawn there. I'll have the 2 bishops. I'll have a bit of a damaged structure, but I'm one move away from playing bishop takes h6 and maybe doing the same thing to my opponent. And my opponent's king is still in the middle. So are you really ever going to shy away from a position where you have the 2 bishops, opponent's king in the middle, queens traded, and up a pawn? I don't think so. That's already enough for me to say, let's do it. I'm interested. I'll sign up. I'll sign up. Queen takes d3. Now, if there's something on top of all that, I mean, it's just more of a convincer. But that already is enough for me. Okay. Very interesting. Castling. So, castling, hitting our bishop. Our opponent is not even going to ruin our pawns. Generous of them, I want to say. Moves that catch my attention here are pretty much only these 2. Could look at bishop takes h6, but after rook takes d3, I think it's easy to quickly refute it. Or decide against it. King b8 is probably a move that needs to happen soon. I'm just looking at like bishop f5 stuff. Bishop e4, don't think is a problem. Bishop e4 looks okay. These moves are very similar. They're almost the exact same. But somehow bishop here does feel a little better. Like if bishop e2, not saying that it's the move, but like I have to think about the fact that it's pinned. So I am kind of drawn to bishop e4, just slightly. Slightly. Okay, Bishop takes. Now, I truly do have an option here. I know it seems weird to take with the pawn, but I don't think it's crazy. So I'm at least considering it, but of course, it's going to be very difficult to decide against bishop takes f3. I'm losing this pawn no matter what in these lines, so that's not the issue. I have one extra pawn. I still have my bishop pair. Bishop d5 holds everything together. Super strong square. Can't be bothered by any pieces. Bishop e2 is a great move. I mean, it's thumbs up. The bishop d5 is just awesome, awesome square. So I'm pretty interested in bishop d5. Moves like b5, I admit I'm thinking about them, but I don't think they could possibly deter me from playing bishop d5. But I am having a look, because the other thing with bishop e2 is, damn, knight c3 and knight d5 looks pretty strong. Not gonna lie. But no, bishop d5 is just too good. Just too good. Got that one extra pawn from earlier. It's been a while, I know. Did you forget we were up a pawn? f5. So, you know, bishop e6 kind of starting to come to mind. I still think taking and bishop here is not the way to do it. What I really am interested in doing after this is gaining time. So taking and going here, maybe I lose this one later, not worth it. You want to develop a tempo. The best I can do here is bishop g5. It attacks the rook, got knight c3 coming. Now my pieces are starting to develop very, very quickly. Rook d7 walks into this. Knight c3, rook d1, rook e1. Suddenly all the pieces are mobilized and ready to go. Knight c3 is great because it supports this bishop. Good move. Rook e1. Not a very nice one there. And now I have the option to take, or I could retreat to my bishop after knight f7, and I think we're going to go with the retreating option. Taking here just seems fully unnecessary to give up the bishop just now. Like, I know it looks tempting, you double the pawns, but the bishops are strong together, and I don't want to give him the g7 square for his bishop. So overall, I'm just not a fan of this move. I like keeping the bishops together. Don't like giving the g file, don't like giving the g7 square. We're just going to keep it simple with knight c3. The other thing that bishop takes h6 does is it leaves me with something that I need to be sure about before I do. It leaves me with opposite colored bishops, right? If I take, like, then these are the only bishops remaining. Opposite bishops, you know, you just need to double and triple check, because those are very drawish by nature. Bishop e7, still looking at this. Of course, looking at bishop e7 now, but mainly thinking about something like bishop e3. Bishop e3 hits the a7 pawn and just saves my bishop. Bishop f4 hits the knight and saves my bishop. So those couple moves are sort of fresh on my mind here. So one of these, instead of giving away the bishop for the knight, instead of trading it for this bishop, I love the idea of keeping it. Keep it on the board. Bishop here looks fantastic if the knight moves. There's bishop e6 and almost a checkmate. One thing about bishop here is if he plays bishop d6, I have to reckon with some knight f3 stuff. So I'm just giving things a second look there. Yeah, I'm not so sure about this. Getting the feeling like this move, he might move the knight and it's totally worth it for me, but I'm going to play the move that I believe is a little bit better. I actually will take this pawn, by the way. Don't think I won't. Don't think I won't. After taking, there's no b6. So a6, good looking move by black. Getting out of this, stopping knight b5. a6 makes a good impression. What I'm about to do, without hesitation, is the move h3. These knights appearing on the g4 square, headache. Big headache for me. So not only do I get an escape square for my king, but dominating both of these knights feels good. Knight d3, I'm also under the impression that, you know, something like rook d1 could be played. If the knight takes, rook d2 does trap that. And so here we go, g5. Looking to maybe play f4, although that's not really a big problem. And g4 is not possible, so not too scared. What I do see, though, is that if I ever try to bother this knight, you know, it will pop into the d3 square. So the moves that I'm looking at here are bishop here and rook d1. Moves like f4, look, I'm interested in f4, but I'm just looking at this d3 square, seeing the knight jumping around and saying, f4 is very direct, puts my bishop in a funny spot. Might get the job done here. And although f4 might be a really good move, I have to say I'm immediately drawn to rook d1 and bishop d4. It seems to be safer. But after calculating f4, with no knight here and with pawn takes being such a nasty move, I think f4 is a winner. F4 is a strong move here, but I have to say f4 is one of those moves that instinctively is not the one I would go for, but because of calculation overriding instincts, I'm gonna play it. But my instinct is definitely go here maybe to pin it, or go rook d1 to stop knight d3. Just make the safe moves first. Okay, bishop takes. Couple threats here. Bishop c5 can be played. We'll sidestep to h1. Doesn't feel good to hand over this diagonal, but I think we're okay. Bishop e6. Kind of a tricky move, because if the king moves here, then we take a free piece, because it's pinned. Bishop e6 becomes a rather attractive move here. These moves are not possible. Knight d7, not possible. King d8, it's just not the move you sign up to play, right? Then the rook comes with check. You want to move your king away from the center, not towards it. So, of course, you have to play king b8, but just unfortunate timing. So black can still find the best moves in the position. Check is so important. to guard this. If you don't do that, you're toast, because I'm taking this with check, and I'm taking another one of your pieces. If you don't play bishop c5, then you're really cooked here. Yeah, so we'll take this rook, of course. Free material. I think just keep bringing the pieces into the middle. This pressure is still there, and rook d8 allows us to finish with a nice tactic. All the pieces disappear here. Rook takes d6, and some sort of like mate like that looks quite likely. Check. Rook d7 forces the king to the last rank. He's going to resign. I think I was going to go for bishop takes b6. Some sort of check. Bring the knight in and go for mate. GG. That was a really good game by my opponent. Very good game. I thought that was fairly instructive. And that doesn't happen with just me here. Like, he played a very good game, especially for this opening. It's tough to play the opening he did at a decent level because you're giving away material, right? The whole opening is based on losing a pawn literally on the third move of the game. So I thought he played it quite well. A3, c5 I'm not a big fan of. It's definitely a decent move, but I think the main moves are a little more like knight c6. But c5, e3, knight c6, knight f3. It's all about these squares. We both know this. Bishop g4, bishop e2. And if you know the pawn ever captures here, we take it back. Queen exchange, we always take back with the bishop. And the point is, anytime that something like this occurs, you take back. And if the knight takes here, not only do we have maybe bishop there, maybe even just bishop d5. Like, there'll be a lot of good things. Two bishops, king still in the middle. We're one move from castling. So don't always think of this opening like we won the pawn, now we have to keep it for the rest of the game. That's not really the way it works. Same thing here. If knight takes e5, bishop takes, rook back, we probably would have just gone back to d5. So now we're still up a pawn because we just won another one. Threatening this, if pawn takes here, I imagine we could almost castle here. Bishop takes, rook takes b2, and then castle. Again, we're not up a pawn in that position. But queen a4 is super strong. Castle is just amazingly good. We're not up a pawn, but our position is way better than it was a couple moves ago. So don't think that this opening is like win the pawn and then protect it the rest of the game. Okay, here, the queen takes d3 seems to be a nice way to do things. Just trade everything. Bishop takes d3 is actually, indeed a stronger move, but hey, queen takes d3, all those things I outlined, that's what I decided to go for. Bishop d3, much stronger, honestly, because, to be honest, you can't really do any of the moves that you want to do because of the pressure of not only the rook, but the queen's on the board. So bishop d3, I think, would have been just a healthier move. But it was hard to say no to this. We knew we were up 2 pawns. I also knew it would probably turn into 1 pawn. A 1 pawn, bishop pair, bishop on such a strong square. I don't really think he made serious mistakes here, just small things that made the position worse and worse. f5 was a mistake. I decided to keep my bishop here, go bishop e3, and then h3, such a nasty move. Just controls all those pieces. And yeah, after g5, the move f4 is super strong. Bishop is dominating the board here, whether it looks like it or not. These knights don't really have anywhere to go. Knight d3 was one of the moves I was talking about, and I was reminding you that actually after this, if you take it, you don't really have any way out. So it's possible you just kind of get stuck in there. Also, this rook b1 is just noticing, and this guy's hanging on b7. Yeah, but the position is wide open, right? There's like no cover for the middle of the board. This area here is wide open. Bishops should dominate a board like this, and they do. And yeah, here, if you go to the center, there's obviously big problems with that. And if you play any other move, you'll lose that knight. Yeah. Tough. He played a really good game, honestly. I was happy with that because I thought it was relatively instructive. We got to see an opening we don't see too often. Thought he played it pretty well for the most part. He got the ideas down. Opening wasn't perfect by him, but like I said, it's tough to sack a pawn against the stronger player. He doesn't know he's doing that, but sack a pawn against a stronger player and still hold it together relatively. So GG. That'll be our last slow chess game for right now. We have our